Meta-ethics revision. There are 4 meta-ethical theories that you need to know. The first theory is ethical naturalism. This is a cognitive theory which involves obtaining statements from sense experience and is objective. Ethical statements can be defined using natural terms and can be treated as non-ethical statements, which are factual statements. There are 2 types of naturalists. Theological naturalists believe goodness is equated to the will of God, whereas hedonistic naturalists believe goodness is a fact of pleasure. Ethical statements approve or disapprove of something. This example shows a factual statement which can be verified using evidence and an ethical statement which can be treated in the same way. The criticisms of ethical naturalism is that it does not allow for moral dispute, it is too simplistic, and the term good is reduced to non-ethical elements. More attack the theory because it commits a naturalistic fallacy. This idea originates from Hume, who claims that you cannot get an ought from an is. Therefore, it is wrong to form a factual statement from a value statement. F.H. Bradley claims that moral perspective is determined from self-realization and observing one's position in society. Therefore, our place in the community provides a satisfying life, but we must know our station and its duties. The theory of intuitionism is a cognitive theory which was put forward by G.E. Moore. His idea was published in his book Principia Ethica. His theory states that we use our intuitive knowledge to determine what is right or wrong. Moore believed goodness cannot be defined and is not a natural property. He claims that intuition is a better guide to truth than observation because we just know when something is good. Pritchard is one of the philosophers who developed Moore's theory of intuitionism. He believed goodness and obligation were indefinable. Just as goodness is recognized by intuition, so are our obligations. There are 2 kinds of thinking: reasoning, which involves collecting facts, and intuition, which determines what we should do. Intuition can help to determine which ethical dilemmas hold greater moral obligation. Everyone has a different intuition, some more clearer than others. W.D. Ross was another philosopher who developed Moore's theory of intuitionism. Ross was a deontologist, and he believed the terms good and obligatory were intrinsically indefinable, and he believed it makes sense to recognize prima facie duties, which are a basic set of moral principles. Ross believed in these rules which are apparent. When duties conflict with each other, we have to weigh one duty against another. He believed the basic principles of ethics are self-evident truths, and they become clear to us when we reach a sufficient intellectual maturity. These are the criticisms of intuitionism. The idea of knowing what is good by intuition and not by any empirical evidence is not proved conclusively by Moore. By looking at the idea of the naturalistic fallacy, the introduction of non-natural facts simply shrouds the whole issue in the mystery. Some philosophers say it's our emotions and practical wisdom that gives us this intuitive knowledge. As sense experience cannot be used, how can we decide between our intuitions? The theory of emotivism is a non-cognitive theory and was put forward by A.J. Ayer. A.J. Ayer was a logical positivist. Ayer claims that ethical statements are emotive responses. When we use ethical terms, we are simply expressing our feelings. He argued that meaningful statements had to be verified either synthetically or analytically. This example shows how the theory of emotivism is applied to different types of statements. Ethical statements are not verifiable because there is no empirical test to check whether the statement is true or false. Therefore, they are meaningless. Therefore, ethical statements are just an expression of emotion. Emotivism is sometimes referred to as the hurrah-boo theory, due to approving or disapproving of something. C.L. Stevenson developed A.J. Ayer's theory of emotivism. There are two main elements in Stevenson's theory: an attitude based on a belief and a persuasive element which seeks to influence others. Stevenson believed that ethical statements had more meaning compared to A.J. Ayer. Stevenson claims that many moral terms are both descriptive and emotive. We express our emotion, but we are also trying to influence others' attitudes. Ethical statements are attitudes based on beliefs about the world. They are attempts to influence the views of others, and they are subjective opinions. Stevenson claims that ethical statements are not only expressions of emotion, but also the result of attitudes based on fundamental beliefs. These are the criticisms of emotivism. It is possible to have another cause for moral belief. Moral judgments appeal to reason. They are not just expressions of feeling, and moral judgments need reason, or else they are arbitrary. All emotivism can do is draw attention to the reasons why people have different views and then let others decide. James Rachels criticizes emotivism and says there is more to moral statements than just simply an expression of feeling. Also, it reduces common moral reactions to horrific crimes such as 9/11 to subjective personal feelings. Prescriptivism is a non-cognitive theory which was put forward by R.M. Hare. Hare believed that ethics was based on reason and logic. Hare claimed that ethical statements were prescriptive because they do not state facts, but they are more like imperatives. Hare argues that we use the word good in relation to a set of standards. Good always has a descriptive meaning and is used in a moral sense. The universalization test is used to confirm ethical statements which are obtained through reason. Hare calls it a moral prescriptivism. These are the criticisms of prescriptivism. Hare argues that it made no sense to say I ought to do X and then not to do X. This takes no account of the weakness of the will, and he has been criticized for this. J. L. Mackie rejects the idea that morals are universal, as your preferences may be different to mine. Therefore, there are no objective values. If moral judgments are founded on prescriptions, this still doesn't mean that there is a valid reason for following in one's prescriptions rather than another's.